When nightmares turn into reality and the home becomes a battlefield, can anyone emerge victorious from a shattered relationship? Her smiles grew mysterious, her touch became foreign, and her glances fleeting. The phone she held like a sacred relic was only the tip of the iceberg. The changes weren't gradual. They crashed down like an avalanche, destroying trust and leaving behind only a chilling sense of betrayal. An old detective with a cold gaze and words sharpened by years of truth tears the deception to pieces. Strange men, secret meetings, and evidence gathered so meticulously that arguing is pointless. But is it only about revenge, or about reclaiming what her lies and betrayal destroyed? What if her downfall is not the end, but the beginning of something greater? And can either of them walk away from this war without losing themselves? Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Please tell me which city and country you watched this video from. Now, let's get started. Sleeplessness had become my constant companion. I would lie there, paralyzed by my own thoughts, staring into the dim glow of city lights filtering through the gaps in the blinds. My mind whirred with ceaseless doubt. Meanwhile, Alice slept soundly beside me, her breathing steady and tranquil, her limbs splayed with careless ease. After 25 years of marriage, it was as if the woman lying next to me had become a complete stranger. Something fundamental had changed. This wasn't the subtle transformation that comes with age or experience. No, this was something far more jarring. It felt as though she had cast off her former self entirely, emerging as someone new, someone unrecognizable. It started in the bedroom. Alice had always been steady, predictable, the kind of person who thrived on routine and rarely stepped beyond familiar boundaries. But then, without warning, she shifted into someone else. The way she touched me, the way she moved, the words she whispered in the dark, everything felt alien. It was like being intimate with someone I had never met before, someone with desires and skills she had never displayed. A friend had once joked over drinks, "If your wife suddenly turns into a temptress after decades of the same old pattern, she's either found God or someone else." Those words echoed in my head each night as I lay awake, studying her sleeping face. I tried to dismiss the thought, chalk it up to a phase. But then more signs appeared. A new perfume, a wardrobe suddenly upgraded, constant texting, and the guarded way she clung to her phone as if it contained something sacred. The worst change of all, she had locked her phone. Alice had never kept secrets from me before. An icy dread coiled in my chest, suspicion calcifying into certainty. Proof was what I needed, and I was resolved to uncover it. The following morning, our conversation was sparse. She stood in the kitchen, dressed in a fitted blouse I had never seen before, humming softly while pouring coffee. "Morning," she greeted me, her attention fixed on her phone. I responded with a grunt. She hardly noticed, lost in her messages, a cryptic smile curving her lips. She thought I wouldn't notice. My jaw tightened. I was done overlooking the clues. By midday, I had made my decision. I hired a private investigator named James Holloway, an old-school detective with graying hair and eyes clouded by years of dark truths. "You think your wife's cheating?" he asked, scribbling something into his notebook. "I don't think," I said, my voice cold and resolute. "I know." James nodded, his expression impassive. "All right, we'll get to the bottom of this." I walked away from our meeting with a leaden weight in my stomach. Deep down, I already knew the truth. I just wasn't ready to face it. James returned with answers in less than a week. He slid a folder across the table. "Prepare yourself," he said. My hands trembled as I opened it, revealing photographs of Alice laughing and touching another man in a hotel parking lot. A stranger, another picture of them locked in a kiss. The pain struck like a punch to the gut. This wasn't a careless mistake. It was deliberate, methodical. My fists tightened, my body racked by anger and despair. But James had discovered more. Photo after photo, each one exposing deeper betrayal, more men, more lies. This wasn't a solitary affair. This was a double life. And Alice was about to answer for it. That night I waited. She came home late, far too late. I was seated at the dining table, the damning photos spread before me. The blood drained from her face the moment she saw them. "What? What is this?" she stammered. I gestured toward the pile of evidence. "You tell me." Her mouth opened, but no words escaped. I stood slowly, the chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "How long, Alice?" I demanded, my voice torn and frayed. Tears shimmered in her eyes. "Caleb." "How long?" I bellowed, slamming my fist against the table. She flinched. The silence that followed was like a void. I stared at her, seeing a stranger instead of the woman I'd loved. "You destroyed everything," I said, my voice hollow and bleak. "You shattered our family." Without waiting for a response, I turned away. The next morning, I filed for divorce. But walking away from her wouldn't be that simple. Alice believed she had orchestrated the perfect betrayal. She thought she had emerged victorious. She was wrong. I was determined to strip her of everything, to leave her with nothing but the wreckage of her own choices. In the days following the delivery of the divorce papers, the house grew colder, the silence unbearable. She didn't scream or lash out. She only stared at the documents, disbelief etched across her features. "You're overreacting," she whispered one evening, sitting across from me at the table. "Caleb, you're being unreasonable." I nearly laughed. "Unreasonable?" I echoed, leaning forward, my words like ice. "I have pictures of you with 3 different men. I have your text logs. I know about the Pure app. You've been living a double life while pretending to be my wife." Her gaze dropped. The truth lay between us like shards of glass, reflecting every lie. There was no going back. "Don't you dare dismiss me like that," I hissed, my fists balled tightly, my voice quivering with barely contained rage. Her mouth thinned to a tense line. "I was unhappy," she whispered, her arms folded across her chest like armor. "So, you craved attention? Well, congratulations. You've got it, just not in the way you were hoping for," I fired back, my words slicing through the air like a blade. Alice's eyes darkened. She sensed something brewing within me, but she couldn't grasp the full extent of my intentions. That unknowing? It petrified her. But I wasn't about to reveal my hand. Not yet. I wanted her to stew in her own paranoia, lost in the labyrinth of her own mind, wondering what kind of reckoning awaited her. By cheating on me, Alice had unwittingly handed me every tool I needed to dismantle her life. We lived in a state where infidelity had real consequences. Alimony, division of assets, all of it structured to benefit the aggrieved party. The investigators painstakingly gathered evidence painted an irrefutable picture. Alice was undeniably guilty. But I sought something deeper than mere legal victory. I wanted her to feel the devastation she had unleashed on me. For the next week, I played the part of the forgiving husband, controlled, considerate, almost gracious, and gullible, overconfident Alice fell for the ruse. She believed I was softening, that she could coax me into giving her far more than she deserved. One evening, she curled up beside me on the couch, her voice dripping with sickly sweetness. "Caleb," she cooed, her hand resting lightly on my knee. "Maybe we don't have to turn this into a war. Maybe we can figure something out," she added. I eyed her, pretending reluctance. "Something out?" I echoed, my voice tinged with feigned uncertainty. She offered a smile, one laced with smugness. "Yes. You don't really want this to drag out in court, do you? We could settle things privately, amicably." The arrogance of her suggestion was almost comical. After half a year of deceit and betrayal, of clandestine encounters with strangers, She had the audacity to suggest a peaceful resolution. Oh, Alice, you were utterly oblivious to what awaited you. While she deluded herself into believing I could be swayed, I was methodically setting a financial trap she'd never foresee. I met with my lawyer, Caroline, outlining the exact strategy to decimate Alice's future. First, we're freezing all joint accounts, I stated firmly. I can't risk her bleeding them dry. Caroline nodded approvingly. Good. And after that? I'm keeping the house, I replied. She can take the car, the furniture, whatever, but the house remains mine. A knowing smile played on Caroline's lips. And with her infidelity on record, her legal standing is practically non-existent. Precisely. Alice thought she had me dancing to her tune, but she had willingly stepped into a trap of her own making. Then the real game commenced. Alice hadn't confined herself to one affair. One of her lovers, David, was married. I made it my mission to find his wife. A bit of investigation led me to Rebecca, a gentle, unsuspecting woman blissfully ignorant of her husband's betrayal. We met at a quiet downtown cafe. Rebecca sat across from me, her expression polite but laced with confusion. I'm sorry, but I don't understand why you wanted to meet me. I slid a folder across the table. Because you deserve to know the truth about your husband. Rebecca hesitated before opening the folder. Her fingers trembled as she flipped through the photographs, David and Alice entwined in parking lots, bars, kissing without shame. I watched the color drain from her face. No, she breathed, her voice fractured. No, he wouldn't. But he did. I took a measured sip of my coffee. I'm divorcing my wife because of it. Tears sparkled in her eyes as she clung to the folder like it was the only thing holding her together. I need to leave, she stammered, rising abruptly. I need to— Rebecca, I interrupted, my voice steady, edged with ice. I have a proposition. She froze, her eyes wide and uncertain. I leaned forward, my gaze sharp and calculating. How would you like to see them destroyed? Her hesitation lasted mere seconds. As I detailed my plan, her despair hardened into something more potent. By the end, her tears had dried, replaced by a resolve that mirrored my own. Together, we designed a meticulous, merciless scheme to tear apart Alice's and David's lives. It began with anonymous envelopes filled with incriminating photos and transcripts. We sent them to David's workplace, Alice's relatives, and everyone within their social circles. Within days, Alice's reputation was reduced to ashes. Once respected, she became nothing but a source of scorn and derision. As for David, Rebecca served him divorce papers, expelled him from their home, and handed over the damning evidence to his employer, a company with a strict code of conduct regarding personal misconduct. By the end of the week, David had lost everything: his marriage, his career, his reputation. And Alice? She stood utterly alone. But I was far from finished. The night Alice realized the depths of her own ruin, she appeared on my doorstep, mascara smeared across her cheeks, eyes wide with desperation. Caleb, she sobbed, her voice cracked and pleading. I made a mistake. Please. I folded my arms, my stare cold and unyielding. A mistake? I echoed, my voice devoid of mercy. Alice, a mistake is forgetting to lock a door, misplacing your phone. What you did? That was a decision, a calculated, selfish decision. She collapsed before me, her frantic apologies falling on indifferent ears. I had achieved everything I intended, and she was left with nothing but the ruins of her own arrogance. Alice's tears fell freely, her chest rising and falling with ragged sobs. I just want to fix things, she stammered, her voice breaking. A sharp, humorless chuckle slipped from my lips. Fix things? I advanced toward her, my shadow looming over her fragile form. Alice, you took everything we had and crushed it. You made me a fool. You lied, you betrayed, and now you're here, begging for forgiveness? Her nod was weak, eyes shimmering with desperation. Leaning closer, my voice sharpened to a whisper. Remember this, Alice. Remember what it feels like to stand there, stripped of excuses and begging for a second chance. I stepped back, my gaze locked onto hers. Because this is the last time you'll ever have my attention. And with that, I slammed the door in her face. The echo of the door slamming didn't bring the satisfaction I craved. Not immediately. I remained rooted in place, breath ragged, fists trembling as her muffled sobs seeped through the thick wood. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times, her crumbling, desperate for mercy, but all I felt was a deep, glacial emptiness. Perhaps because I knew her punishment had only begun. No, this was just the start. She had debts to pay, and I wasn't done collecting. I drifted into the darkened living room, its silence vast and cold, the air thick with the absence of joy and warmth. This house, once alive with laughter and affection, was now nothing but a shrine to everything lost. I poured myself a glass of whiskey, letting the harsh burn flood my throat. The rage and exhaustion churned within me, but one truth remained unwavering. Alice's pain was only beginning. She had destroyed my life. Now, I would dismantle hers. Alice thrived on admiration. She craved the approval of her friends, the illusion of being the woman who had everything under control. But what happens when that image crumbles? When the truth claws its way to the surface and everyone sees her for what she truly is? I picked up my phone and dialed Rebecca's number. She answered quickly, her tone sharp and wary. "Caleb." "It's time," I replied, my voice flat and cold. She didn't hesitate. "Let's proceed." That night, the first leaks spread across the internet. Photos gathered by the investigator, texts exchanged with her lovers, timestamps and locations. Every so-called work meeting, cheap motels and stolen moments. By morning, the whispers had erupted into full-fledged accusations. By noon, she was cast out from her women's group, the same group she had carefully cultivated for years. No one wanted their name associated with a liar and a fraud. Her closest friends turned their backs, her own family wouldn't answer her calls, and then the final blow, her employer found out. A photo surfaced of her leaving a hotel with a businessman whose ties to her company were far too close for comfort. Within days, she was summoned to HR. By the end of the week, her career was over. No job, no friends, no reputation. Only shame remained. But even that wasn't enough. There were still debts left to settle. Jessica and Kara, our daughters, had played their part unknowingly. They thought their suggestions of an open marriage would save us, that somehow it would heal the fractures instead of tearing us further apart. They believed they were helping. My phone buzzed again, another missed call from Jessica. This time, I answered. "Dad," she said, her voice strained and thin. "Can we meet? Just us, without Mom." I exhaled slowly. "All right." She named a cafe. 20 minutes later, I found them huddled at a corner table, eyes rimmed red from crying. Kara looked utterly broken, while Jessica wore exhaustion like a shroud. I took the seat across from them. "Talk." Jessica's voice wavered. "We're sorry, Dad." Kara's words were almost too soft to hear. "We never meant for things to end up like this." My arms folded across my chest, the tension coiled tight. "But you encouraged her." They both flinched. I leaned forward, my voice like stone. "Tell me something. When you urged your mother to try an open relationship, did you ever think to ask me? To even consider if it was something I wanted?" Jessica shook her head, the guilt plain on her face. "We trusted her." Kara wiped her eyes. "We were stupid, Dad. We thought if you both discussed it, you'd reconnect." A bitter laugh escaped me. "Reconnect? Does this feel like connection to you? Like any sort of happy ending?" Jessica flinched, shoulders curling inward. "No, and we hate ourselves for it." The anger dulled, replaced by a weight far heavier. I ran a hand over my face, the exhaustion sinking into my bones. No matter what had happened, they were still my daughters. Their intentions hadn't been malicious, but that did nothing to alter the reality of their actions. No amount of regret could erase their role in driving their mother toward betrayal. That was a truth I couldn't simply ignore. "Listen," I began, my voice strained after a long, suffocating silence. "I'm not ready to forgive you." Kara's sob cut through the air, but I raised a hand, stopping her. "I'm not cutting you out of my life," I added. Jessica's breath trembled with relief. "So, what now?" My exhale was slow, deliberate. "You give me space, let me heal, and you make damn sure you never interfere in my relationships again." They nodded, wiping away their tears. It wasn't forgiveness. It was nowhere near that. But for the first time in weeks, I felt the faintest hint of something other than anger. The next time I saw Alice, she was a shell of the person she used to be. The hair she once kept perfectly styled was now tangled and dull. Her expensive, tailored outfits replaced by tattered thrift store clothes. She had lost everything, and the cruelest truth of all was that she understood it was her own doing. She appeared at my door, hollow and gaunt, like some wandering, broken ghost. When I opened it, she just stood there, tears tracing thin lines down her cheeks. "Please," she whispered. I met her gaze, unflinching. "Please what?" Her throat bobbed painfully as she struggled to find the words. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice splintering. I just want my life back." I tilted my head, scrutinizing her. "The life you tore apart." She trembled as silence thickened the air between us, forcing her to confront the wreckage she had created. Finally, I spoke the only words that mattered. "It's too late." Her expression shattered, the weight of my rejection crumpling her entirely. I closed the door, sealing her out of my life for good. But Alice didn't leave right away. She lingered on the porch for nearly 10 minutes. I watched her through the peephole, her shoulders shaking, arms wrapped tightly around herself. Her sobs were muted, but I felt nothing. Not rage, not pity, just a dull, indifferent emptiness. Alice had made her choices, and now she was trapped within their aftermath. I walked away from the door, ignoring her presence until her cries faded and her footsteps finally retreated. When I glanced outside again, she was gone. But her suffering was far from over. She clung desperately to her remaining savings, convinced she could rebuild. She didn't realize how thoroughly I had dismantled her safety net. No job, HR had seen to that. No friends, she'd burned all her bridges. Her reputation, destroyed beyond repair. I ensured the divorce settlement left her with nothing but what the courts strictly mandated. No house, no income, no path back to the life she once flaunted. The woman who believed herself untouchable was now utterly powerless. She tried to reach out to the men she once toyed with, but none of them had any interest in her now. David vanished without a trace. Liam blocked her number. And that joke of a man who called himself Noah Matthews couldn't even recall her name. She was no longer the fantasy she once projected, just a discarded, broken woman. The final blow came from a mutual acquaintance who informed me that she'd been forced to move into a dingy apartment on the town's fringes, from luxury to a shabby one-bedroom unit with peeling wallpaper and broken blinds. The irony was biting. She now lived in the same cheap motel she once used for her clandestine affairs. I kept my distance from Jessica and Kara, not out of resentment, but because I couldn't yet forgive. But then one night, Kara showed up alone at my doorstep. Her face was pale, uncertainty carved into her features as she clutched a small envelope. I hesitated, then stepped outside. "What are you doing here?" She swallowed hard. "Dad, I need to talk to you." I crossed my arms, my expression guarded. "Go on." Her breath wavered. "I want to see Mom." My body went rigid. "That's not my concern." Kara's eyes shone with guilt. "I know. I know she brought this on herself, but seeing her like that, it just made me realize how much we all messed up. I stayed silent, my gaze fixed on her. She extended the envelope, her hand trembling. It's a letter. From me. From Jessica, too. We wrote down everything we couldn't say aloud. I hesitated, but eventually accepted the envelope. Kara bit her lip, her voice faltering. We miss you, Dad. Before I could respond, she turned and walked away. I stood there for a long time before I finally unfolded the letter. Their words spilled out, tangled with guilt, regret, and love. And as I read through every line, something deep within me began to crack. Weeks passed. I moved forward, returning to work, rebuilding friendships, reconstructing a life Alice had tried so ruthlessly to destroy. Then, one afternoon, a final message arrived from an unfamiliar number. Alice, I know you'll never forgive me, but I needed to say it. I'm sorry. I ruined everything, and I deserve what happened. Maybe one day, happiness will find its way back to you. I stared at that sentence as if the letters themselves were an enigma I needed to unravel. I could have answered. I could have unleashed every bitter, unspoken thought I'd kept buried for so long. But instead, I made the only decision that truly mattered. With a calm, deliberate breath, I deleted the message and released it all. For the first time in years, the crushing weight eased from my shoulders. Alice was no longer part of my world. The betrayal, the anguish, the relentless burden of all she had inflicted, none of it held sway over me anymore. And above all else, my daughters were back in my life. The process wasn't perfect, but healing had begun, piece by piece. As I stood on my back porch, watching the sun melt into the distant skyline, I exhaled deeply, a cleansing release from somewhere deep within. For the first time in what felt like forever, I experienced true peace. Alice's hold had shattered, and I had taken back control of my own life. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you.